What is data and why is it important? Data is a collection of facts that has been translated into a form that computers can process. So when you book your flight or make payments towards your utility bills or probably sharing photograph on social media platform, so your action leads to a generation of some sort of data. This data is stored in different mediums depending on the nature of application that you are interacting with. Large-scale enterprise applications generally use database to store this valuable information. The stored data is further processed by different systems and subsystems to improve the efficiency of current process and customer services. Now the question is how to store and access data from the database. And the answer is SQL or Structured Query Language. Ladies and gentlemen, once again welcome back to our channel, and the topic for today's session is SQL or Structured Query Language. So without wasting any time, let's focus on today's agenda. So we start today's session with introduction to Structured Query Language or SQL, followed by features of SQL and the difference between SQL and host language. Then we will deep dive into type of SQL statements, and finally I will close this session with couple of SQL statement examples. So ladies and gentlemen, before I start with today's presentation, I would request you all to do subscribe to our channel because we need your support to grow our channel. And in case if you have already subscribed to our channel, then I would like to say a big thank you for your subscription. So let's get started with introduction to SQL. The term SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it is also pronounced as SQL. SQL is the language that communicates with the database. It is a de facto standard query language for relational database management systems. SQL is supported by all the leading RDBMS products such as IBM DB2, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, and many more. Now let's look at what are the different features of SQL. SQL is simple and easy to use because you have predefined set of SQL statement that can be used to access or store data to the database. SQL is flexible and portable. You can write single function in multiple different ways. For example, you can combine data from multiple tables either by joining or by nested queries. Another important feature of SQL is that being a programmer, you only need to specify what data is needed, but you are not required to specify how to retrieve the data from the database. It means that you don't need any data navigational instructions. SQL is flexible and it uses a free form structure. Finally, SQL is not just a query language. In fact, the same language is used to query data, is used also to define data structure, control access to the data, and other operations, for example, insert, modify, or delete occurrences of the data in the database. Now let's try to understand the difference between SQL and host language programming, and what are the important points that you should keep in mind when you're including SQL statements such as select, insert, update, or delete in your applications, which is created in host language, for example, COBOL, Java, Rex, or any other programming language. The major difference between SQL and host language is that SQL support set level processing and host language support record level processing. Let's try to understand that with the help of a diagram. So whenever you execute an SQL statement, whether it's a data retrieval statement or data modification statement, the results are returned as a set. So in set level processing, all action occurs on a set and all results are returned as a set. Sometimes the set is empty or contains only one row or column. That depends on your query that you have executed. Now let's talk about host language. In this example, I'm using COBOL as a host language, and COBOL program is interacting with DB2 database with the help of SQL statement. And as you know that host language can process one record at a time, They are not designed to process multiple records in a single request. So you need a special mechanism such as DB2 cursors to process the set of rows which is returned by an SQL statement. Now let's focus on SQL statement types. So the SQL statements are categorized into two categories. First one is based on functionality and second one is based on execution. Based on functionality, SQL statements are divided into three categories. First one is DCL, that is data control language. Then you have DDL, that is data definition language, and the third one is DML, that is data manipulation language. DCL is generally used for control of data and security, and you have two statements. First one is grant and second one is revoke. Data definition language is generally used to define the structure, for example table or views. And there are three SQL statements which are generally used for this purpose. First one is create, that we'll use to create an object. Third one is alter, in case if you want to modify the structure. And third one is drop, if you want to drop the structure. Last one is data manipulation language, and it is generally used to manipulate data which is stored in the database. So there are four SQL statements which is generally used for this purpose. First one is select, that is used to access data from a table. Then you have insert, if you want to insert data into a table. Third one is update, which is generally used to update data in the table. And the last one is delete, which is used to delete data from the table. Now let's look at second category of SQL based on execution types. Based on execution type, SQL statements are further subdivided into two categories. First one is static SQL statement and second one is dynamic SQL statement. In static SQL statement, SQL statements are embedded or hard-coded into host language program. For example, in our case, we are using COBOL DB2 application. So these SQL statements will be embedded into your COBOL program so that it can access data from the DB2 tables. Dynamic SQL statements are also included in application program, but they are included in a different way. In fact, they are constructed by an application program during the runtime. Now let's look at a couple of SQL statement example. So the first one is to select data from the DB2 table. In second example, I'm using delete SQL statement to delete data from the table. And I've used where clause to specify the criteria to identify and delete that specific record. In last example, I'm using create SQL statement to create the structure of table with following fields like employee ID, first name, age. So this is how you can use different set of SQL statement as per your requirement. So ladies and gentlemen, this marks an end to our today's session, and I would request you all to do subscribe to our channel because we need your support to grow our channel. And in case if you have already subscribed to our channel, then I would like to say a big thank you. And at the same time, I would request you to do share this video with your friends and do hit the like button. And in case if you have any feedback for us, then please do mention that in comment section.